Good morning, everybody. Hey, it's Derek, and thought we'd do the second part of this Kammok Sunda review. And my kids and I did a backyard hang because, you know, here in Flagstaff, spring is kind of variable. We could get all kinds of weather, sometimes hail and snow. To this last night, we got a ton of rain, which I thought, hey, we got to take advantage of this. So I quickly set up, in fact, let me show you. We'll switch the camera view here. Can you guys see that okay? So we've got the tensile up there hanging. It's about 10 feet off the ground, and then in the trees next to it I've got the Sunda. So it was a lot of fun rain. You can see, well, let me get a little closer. Actually, that's what I love about you can check out all this water. Oh, nice. That's one thing I don't like about some of these platform tents is that it's really tough to get the tarps just right, pooling this water. Woohoo! All right, sorry, I just had to do that. It's very fulfilling. All right, but over here, let's look at the Sunda. So there it is, hovering off the ground. Now, this is the hammock mode. This is the mode that I've been waiting to test and try. And tricky. The setup is actually not too bad in terms of, because this was a challenging test because I'd set it up in the rain, trying to make sure I got a full exposure of how everything works. Now I didn't get everything perfect because, as you can see, I think the videos recommend having tie-outs on all the corners. All I had was the tie-outs that came with the hammock originally, or the tent mode, I guess, when I had tested it before, just pulling out the vestibule, which proved to be, you know, it actually exposed some of the weaknesses of the hammock mode and in how this fly kind of works. Now, one of the things I was worried about, you can see here on the ends, there's not a lot of clearance from the hammock and the tarp. I mean, it's virtually non-existent, which is very problematic when it's severe storms. Now, thankfully for us, we didn't have a ton of wind last night, but we did have a lot of rain. But it was, so you can see from a vertical perspective, depending on the angle of that rain, you can have exposure on that hammock. So that's one kind of downside of the fly, the way it's set up. Now, the way this sets up as a hammock, it reminded me a lot of, there's two other hammocks that have a similar setup, or that felt very common. One is the hammock. Well, hold on, I gotta think about this for a second. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. I should have written it down. Oh, anyway, there's one hammock that has spreader bars and it has tent poles as well on the end. And the similarities there are feel very familiar inside the hammock, except that the difference with the Sunda is that the hammock is not connected to these spreader poles, which is nice because there's a little bit of independent movement there. But one of the similar problems is that this thing really teetered. In fact, without these side guy outs, when I was setting up this hammock, the Sunda would almost flip over. You can see a little bit of wind here. If there was more wind, it would easily just pick this up. That's why these end tie outs are essential when you're in the hammock mode. Now, another problem with the tent poles, well, let me first say an advantage. This ridge pole is great because it makes sure that the fly does not collapse when you're in hammock mode. And let me explain why. When you're in a hammock and you get in it, you know, that weight is gonna lower that just a little bit. And because the tarp or the fly is connected to the hammock, the fly is gonna move with the hammock as well. And so as things compress and start to move around, the tendency for flies like this is also to collapse. You know, it's one of the issues that Hennessy has when you connect the rain fly to the hammock suspension, is that the fly collapses just a little bit unless you hang it just right. But getting it just right is difficult for a lot of people, and sometimes they tend to just pull it too tight, and anyway, there's issues there. But this ridge pole actually prevents that. So the nice thing is, the pro is that this Sunda does not collapse. However, now let's talk about some of the cons. Because of the way that this fly, you can see how floppy this edge was, or this edge is, and it's the same on the other side. That was problematic with the rain and the wind. It was hard to get taut. Now, if I pulled out these sides, you know, maybe I could prevent some of that by just pegging out the ends, but again, I didn't have that last night. Another problem with with a encased hammock tarp like this is that getting in, you really have to dig underneath and to get inside, and because there's no entrance really. With the regular tarp, you could enter in from the ends, because those are often open, but that's not an option with the Sunda, so you really have to crawl under the sides. And if it's raining, you don't want to unzip the door here, because that just exposes the hammock. So it is kind of a catch-22. All right, so inside though, one of the nice things is that you've got tons of room. It just feels very open inside, and I did like that. So let me get in here. You see, I got my underquilt stay warm hammock. Now I'm gonna take another measurement of the hammock itself, because I was worried too that it was gonna be a small hammock based on the floor or the footprint of this hammock, or this tent, I should say. But I actually slept pretty comfortably. I got a nice deep sag and was comfortable during the night. Lots of room, interior room inside. I mean, these tent poles make this just feels very roomy inside, with the bug net really high off your head. Granted, I did miss having what I would consider like a peak storage up above me. There is some storage pockets here in the corners. You can kind of see them right here, but they're a little bit tricky because the hammock, you know, it's compressing or pulling all that fabric together. So these pouches up here in the top are a bit difficult to use up here at the tops. They're also at the bottom. So I could tie, there is loops here at the top that I could put some ridgeline loops and maybe hang a ridgeline organizer. So I did miss that. I think those might be accessory options for the Sunda later. I just didn't have them. All right, let me try to get out of here. Again, you gotta kind of crawl out. So, hammock mode, pros and cons. Bit floppy on the sides. You really need to peg out the corners. The tent otherwise it has a tendency to tip out, tip over, which is tricky. Comfortable though. And then the other con, I think, is just the coverage on those peaks. You can see is very, very minimal. So, tent mode, I think, works great for this. Hammock mode does have some compromises. You lose one of the occupancy of the hammock, or the tent. So if you packed with 2 people and you want to do a hammock, that's not going to happen. Coverage is tricky, and but it is roomy inside for the hammock. It seemed pretty comfortable. So anyway, very interesting. Again, whenever you try to have these hybrid models like this, you're going to have some compromises. If you're just having for car camping, excursions like that, this is probably a fun option. It definitely gives you the option of going to the ground fairly easily. But like I said, there are a lot of hammocks that can do that today, that have options for going to the ground, that have tent poles. And even though I can't remember the name of one, I'll post it in the comments because for whatever reason I can't remember the name. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And well, if you have any questions, please post them in the comments and I'll try to address them and get some more feedback for you on this Sunda Model 2. This is Derek with The Ultimate Hang. See ya.